Warning, I may be from Alabama, roll tide, but I talk really fast. So if I go too fast, just throw something at me or flash more bright lights at me. Either one works. I'm going to talk to you about why you should use social media, but also why it's not about you, it's not about your hospital, it's not about the government, it's not about anything that you think it is. So we're going to take the me out of healthcare social media. But first, I'm going to tell you 3 things that you should do, but before that, I'm going to tell you a story. I want you to meet Sarah. She's a young woman who loves Diet Coke and sticky notes. So instead of those legal pads or those iPad things, she's always using sticky notes to take her notes. More importantly, she's a patient. In 2002, she was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. Now, Dr. Google couldn't help her, even though she went online, was trying to learn about what is type 1 diabetes, what is type 2 diabetes, what the hell does Wilford Brimley have to do with her disease? Now, Dr. Google couldn't help, and neither could Wilford Brimley or Ryan Gosling, but other people could. She now has a purple insulin pump. She learned about the pump online and realized it would help her with her lifestyle, which means despite having type 1 diabetes, she can still have the cupcakes that she loves. Great, right? What's the problem? Well, she was then diagnosed with celiac disease. So what did she do? She went online to find out, how on earth can I eat cupcakes if I have celiac disease, if I can't eat wheat and gluten? It's in everything, right? So she used Twitter to figure out how to live with diabetes, celiac disease, and still function as a somewhat normal person. So you may have guessed, this is my story, and this is why social media matters. I've had type 1 diabetes for almost 10 years. I've had celiac disease for 3 years, and I often say without social media I would have starved to death because I don't like rabbit food. So social media is a big help for that. But at the beginning and end of every day, I am first and foremost a patient. How many of you guys are patients? If you're not raising your hand, pound fail. We're all patients, and that's something that we need to remember when we're thinking about social media and healthcare and campaigns. You're not campaigning at somebody. You're not distributing messages and hoping it sticks. It's really about them, which means it's about you and us. So like Mark was saying earlier, every time you send a tweet, every time you ask your community to do something, you need to be thinking about, would I do that? If I was a part of that diabetes community, that cancer community, that group that are still smoking, would you be willing to take that action? And if not, reconsider. So I just want to give you a little quick background of how I got here, or how I ended up in Seattle from Alabama. In 2009, I started HCSM, or Pound HCSM. Has anybody ever seen this hashtag on Twitter? A lot of people. Has anybody joined the Sunday night chats? A couple of people. Great, you're my HCSMers. So in 2009, I decided instead of having a lot of one-on-one conversations, I actually wanted to talk to all of you at once. And if you're not standing in front of a room full of people at a conference, how on earth do you talk to 100 people within an hour at the same time? Well, we decided to try this newfangled thing called hashtags, and that's how HCSM, or HCSM, was created. The goal to bring doctors, patients, lawyers, hospitals, government agencies, private PR firms, nonprofits, for-profits, everybody together to have this conversation just like we're doing now. But instead of once a year or once every so often, every single Sunday night, using Twitter, which means you don't have to be on an iPad, you don't have to be on an iPhone. If you can get internet access and you have a Twitter account, you can join this conversation. And you can lurk. You don't have to be physically sitting in the room. Nobody has to know that you're participating. And so this is a beautiful thing because we're starting the conversations that are changing healthcare. Like this conference, you may take away an idea for a campaign or a project or change something that you've been doing and make it a little bit different and make healthcare different and help a patient, help somebody achieve health or healthier behaviors. That's what HCSM, that's what we're doing is all about. And so that's why I'm really passionate about Sunday nights. If you schedule a conference on Monday and you want to do something on Sunday night, no go. I'd have to skip the entertainment because I'm really dedicated to HCSM and to participating in this community because we're seeing changes in healthcare because of the conversations we're having online in communities like this. So it's really important to be able to do that without having to pay to come to a conference or without having to be in a physical location. HCSM really removes the barriers so you don't have to be physically present. It doesn't matter if you're a fancy pants PhD, a real doctor, a sort of doctor, a patient, just an intern. All of those people can participate in the conversation and contribute and change healthcare. So now, what am I doing up here and why do I think I can tell you what to do? Because I can, but also because last year I moved to Swedish in Seattle and we started focusing on social media. But I'm always very careful to say, we don't do social media. My CEO introduces me as the 20-year-old who does social media. I hate that title, 1, because I'm not 20, I'm a little bit older than that, but 2, we don't do social media. In just a year, social media has turned into the thing that the CEO is able to talk about proudly and wants to tell other CEOs that we're doing better than they are. It's become a part of our internal education process, which I'll talk about in a minute. And it's spoken of highly, not just by your CEO, not just by me and my boss, but of nurses, clinical safety, education. Social media has really integrated into our organization, and that's something I want to talk to you about. So while I work for a nonprofit health system, yes, hospitals, clinics, doctors, it's healthcare. We're focusing on helping patients just like you are. We're just coming from a different building in a different area of the country. One example I wanted to give you, and this was kind of the highlight for me to understand how far we had integrated in our organization, was there was a really bad winter storm at the end of January. You may have heard about it on the Weather Channel. Jim and all those people came out in their jackets and photographed outside in the snowstorm. We had an issue because we have hundreds of clinics, 5 hospitals, and we had patients who had appointments. And they wanted to know, are my appointments canceled? Can I get there? What happens in an emergency? So in healthcare, I don't get to stay home, 1, because I live down the street, but 2, because my job is to keep people informed. So I used our website, I used Facebook, I used Twitter to post about clinic openings and closings, how to get there, road closures, information, and it worked. I actually called our call center, the 3866,000, that main Swedish number, to tell them, if you need updates, if people are calling to ask, go check out this blog post that I'm updating like every 30 minutes. And they said, oh yeah, we already know. We've known for hours. And I was like, how? I forgot to call you like 6 hours ago. They said, oh, somebody from the safety huddle told us. And I said, well, how did the safety huddle know? I don't know anybody in the safety huddle. I'm not cool enough to be in the safety huddle. They said, oh, some senior leader told us. So social media has really become the fabric of our organization, which is good. So they don't have to rely on me to say, hey, check out Facebook or check out the blog for information in an emergent situation. People know because we have these tools in place. So we're able to tell from the traffic, we're able to measure how many people got this information from the call center, from the blog, who are able to get to our facilities. So financially, the snowstorm didn't hurt us as bad as it would have if we just didn't have any patients because they didn't know we were open. And also in a community when there was no power and people were at home in 20-degree weather, snow, no power for days, they were able to know that if they had a healthcare emergency, they could get to our hospital, which was running on generator power. If they needed food or care, they could get there. So that's great, and that's kind of the point within my organization to get us fully integrated. But I'm going to tell you 3 things that you really need to be doing that's not just doing social media. So the first thing, whether you're an agency, whether you're in a government agency, whether you're with a PR agency, you're working for a hospital, health system, you should be coaching. The fact that you're here means you're an advanced user. You know something. You probably know a lot of things, but are you spreading your knowledge beyond this hashtag, beyond HCSM? And if not, pound fail, but that's your homework assignment. You need to be coaching people. In my organization, I don't just coach my team, I don't coach our senior leadership, we coach physicians, nurses, program managers, biz dev, HR, anybody who I can get my hands on, we're coaching them to use these tools. Because whether you think it or not, everybody in your organization is using social media. They're using it differently. Some love Facebook, some love Twitter. They may be using it professionally. You may be tweeting as your organization at this conference, or you may be tweeting for yourself. But all these people are using social media in one way or another, but they need to be coached. They need to be helped, especially if their role isn't to focus on social media. Physicians especially are really important. Physicians and other sort of doctors, because their expertise isn't necessarily in social media, it's in clinical medicine, it's in these other things. What I've learned is that social media is scary, and yes it is. If you told your friend to do social media for their company, if you told a senior leader or an intern, all eyes are on you, do social media, they'd probably run away screaming. I would too. So what you need to do is wade in, give them little steps. Instead of scaring them and saying, okay, you're gonna do a blog and you're gonna manage it all by yourself, say, write 2 paragraphs or 3 paragraphs. Or if they're having a conversation that's really interesting, pull out that new flip cam you just got, pull out your iPhone, your iPad, and record the conversation, put it on YouTube, and show them, and explain how people find it, and show them the comments, and show them the views, and show them how it works. Little things that we take for granted in understanding how to copy and paste, so that you can copy and paste and retweet something. Not everybody knows how to copy and paste, so they don't understand the mechanisms of retweeting. That might be advanced for them. So find out what people know, whether it's a physician or a colleague, and give them baby steps that they can do and wade in rather than dive in. Because if you throw them into the deep end, they're going to drown, and then other people will see them drowning and run away screaming. The idea is to take them into the baby pool, and other people can say, oh look, he's doing that, she's doing that. I can go there too, I'm not going to drown, they're going to help me. And they'll slowly start coming up to speed as a group. So that's really effective that I learned from physicians, but it really applies to anybody who you're trying to indoctrinate, get them to join the cult, or just walk them into the baby end of the pool instead of throwing them in. And also those who are interested and excited do best. So somebody was saying a stat out of all the people online, only 2% are talking about your brand, or 2% are listening, whatever. It's a really small number. And a small percentage of that are the ones who want to engage with you. They're calling and tweeting you, talking to you. Engage with them. Spend your time with them. I love Diet Coke. That was my story. So I talk about Diet Coke all the time. I tweet about it. I tweet at Diet Coke US. If they're smart, they're going to engage with the brand ambassadors, especially within the diabetes community who are really active, and help them share their love for Diet Coke. The stupid thing would be to ignore us, because then we're going to like their brand less, and we're going to stop talking about them because we're not getting any feedback or any engagement. The same thing goes for your brand, or if you're doing it on behalf of the campaign. It's really important to help those who are naturally excited and interested in talking about and with you. I also like to say there's 4 steps of physician adoption, specifically because I work with physicians, but this applies to anybody. First, it's no way. And then second, there's fear. But fear is a really good thing because you've gotten them out of that biggest box that they're in, and they're into thinking, oh, here's all the reasons I can't do it. Then they start thinking about what if and the reasons why I can't do it, but a few things you could do with it. And then finally, they'll start taking those baby steps. But they mentally have to be interested and inclined, and at least in that fear step. If they're at the point where they just won't listen to you, they won't be in the room with you when you pull out your iPad, that's not the place you want them to be. You want them at least be fearing it, because then they understand that there's risks, but there's also opportunities. So you have to show them how to take advantage of these opportunities that outweigh the risks. But again, fear is a good thing. It's the not considering, not participating, not at all, that's the bad part. So number 2, you should be coaching, hand-holding, walking them into the baby pool, but you also need to be educating anybody and everybody and participating with them. For us within our organization, all staff, we have policies, trainings, but I also consider it my responsibility to set the standard. Even though it's not documented in our policy, every gray issue, I take it upon myself to educate my colleagues, the department, other people about what is the ethical and legal behavior, or I call legal, and we figure out what is that ethical and legal standard, and let's set it. Let's be that role model. Let's not be afraid to do that. It's very easy with us for social media to then disseminate it across the organization. But you need to have the policies in place, but you also need to have tools, training, and resources. So you can't just drop a document on the desk and say, okay, there you go. You've got a social media policy. You have to educate people about it, what it means, and also tell them positive behaviors. Not just you don't do this, this, and this, and this. It's like, well, what can I do? Show them examples of things they can do that fit with your policy. And again, this can be internal with your own organization. It can be if you're an agency educating a team. It can be part of a campaign if you're educating influencers. Say, here's our commenting policy, or here's our social media policy that ties to this campaign. Here's how we'd like people to engage. Here's the only scenarios in when we would delete a comment off of the page wall. You need to be open and clear about that. But you also need to realize that there's different types of learners and different types of people. So I love to read, and I won't sit through a video because I talk fast, and listening to people talk slowly drives me nuts. You may be very different. You may love video, or you may love to download things onto your iPod and listen to podcasts while you run. So just like you do different types of content to reach different kinds of audiences, do different types of content internally for your education as well. And then finally, after you coach and you educate, you must facilitate. You must be the one to say, here's these tools, let's use them. Let's think about the different ways that we can use them. And this needs to be across your organization. Again, not just externally. When you think social media, when you think campaigns, it's not always external. Sometimes it's internal, working with other government employees, working with your team, disseminating that message. But you need to be the one that helps facilitate the use of social media. And you need to have that vision to be able to do so. And you also need to be a connector in addition to a community manager. I think Mark's presentation earlier did a great job talking about communities, because your team is a community. Your target audience of patients with diabetes is a very close-knit community. But then within your organization, you need to have a strategy and be able to connect people to resources and say, you've been doing that Facebook page, and let's try something different. I think this Twitter chat, this community would work really great for you. So connect people to resources and also to different communities. And you also build channels that can be used for multiple purposes. So don't think you have to use a Facebook wall one way. Who's ever used the Facebook poll feature? Asked a question to your audience. Only a couple people. I highly recommend it. For some reason, it's like crack on our Facebook page, and everybody wants to answer the poll question. But if you just ask a question as a status update, nobody will respond. Crickets. It's very weird. I don't know why. But that's something we learned from trial and error experimentation. So you need to be willing to try and use things differently. We built a blog that actually a lot of doctors use. This is a screenshot just to show you. We have doctors, nurses, dietitians, regular people like me blogging. In the case of an emergency like the snow, we'll put it up there. But you can see this wordle of all the titles of people blogging. What's the biggest one? MD. We built it kind of for doctors, but not expecting them to take it and run with it, but they really have. So we needed to figure out how are all the different ways we can use it and not be afraid to use it. So instead of building a landing page for a contest, why don't we write a blog post about it, embed all the widgets and everything we want in a blog post, and drive people over to the blog where they can engage socially with it more than they could with a static landing page. So don't be afraid to use things for multiple purposes, and definitely use them after you've built them. The same thing for labor negotiations. We built an internal blog. It's technically external. You could see it if you want to go look at it, but we just shared that URL with our internal audience. So we were able to repurpose it for a different use. And again, after you've built them, don't be afraid to use them, and remember to measure. Somebody made a great point yesterday about GGI, or goals going in. You can't measure it unless you know what your goal was going into it, because how do you measure whether or not that was effective? And that's something I've learned over time a lot of people don't do in social media. So you need to have your goals and objectives ahead of time. You need to use your channels and then be willing to measure them. We have the tools to measure return on investment in terms of time, money, engagement. We have all of this information. So I'm running out of time, but I just want to tell you a few more things. Social media has a short half-life, but remember to package your efforts. So when you do something, don't just do a live stream, you need to recap it so people can come back and see it later. And you also, again, need to make sure you have that goal so you're able to take that repackaged effort and get it to the right people. And if you're different, you think you're different, dare to think different, be different. This is just a screenshot of a Pandora commercial that we did because we had this target audience that we were doing a campaign for, and that target audience, the demographics matched Pandora. So we tried it. No other hospital in our area is trying Pandora. And it worked. It wasn't as successful as we liked, but it worked pretty well, and we were able to learn about this new medium that we didn't know before, and even though our ad agency hadn't done it before, it was worth a try. So don't be afraid to think different, try different things. But remember, if you remember anything that I talked to today beyond you need to coach, educate, and facilitate, you really need to remember it's not about you. It's about me. It's about the patients. It's about the influencers that you're trying to reach. It's about their life and how you fit into it, not how your message fits into them. Because at the end of the day, it's really about our health.